when the wine cellar opened. The wine cellar door slammed shut with a sound that echoed through the stone walls like a final verdict. For a split second, everything went silent. Then reality crashed in. Joanna froze, one hand still hovering near the digital control panel, her breath caught painfully in her throat. The dim lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, casting long shadows across rows of ancient wooden shelves stacked with bottles worth more than her monthly rent. No. No, 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 she whispered, pressing the button again. Nothing. Behind her, a man exhaled slowly. Well, he said calmly, far too calmly, that doesn't sound good. Joanna spun around. The waiter. The infuriatingly handsome one. Shirtless now, his uniform top discarded moments earlier because someone, him, had spilled champagne down his front during the gala upstairs. This is your fault, she snapped, panic sharpening every word. He lifted his hands in mock surrender, dark eyes glinting with amusement despite the situation. I prefer to think of it as a shared disaster. She glared at him. You leaned on the panel. You shoved me. I shoved you because you were being careless. And you're charming under pressure, he replied dryly. Joanna turned back to the door, pounding on it with the side of her fist. Help. Hello. We're locked in. Her voice bounced uselessly off stone in silence. Nothing answered. She sagged against the wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the cold floor. 3 floors underground. No signal. No witnesses. No supervisor who cared enough to notice she was missing. Perfect. Just perfect. 3 hours earlier, Joanna Mascarenas had walked into the Grand Hotel ballroom wearing a pressed black uniform and a smile she had perfected over years of being invisible. Luxury events paid well, but they came with a price. Guests who didn't see you as human. Supervisors who treated you like replaceable furniture. And tonight, of all nights, the room was full of people who had never been told no in their lives. She needed this job. Her rent depended on it. Her younger sister's university tuition depended on it. And dignity? Dignity had become a luxury she couldn't afford. That's when she noticed him. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark hair slightly too messy to fit the polished atmosphere. And completely out of place. He tripped over his own tray. Champagne splashed. A guest cursed. Joanna winced. First night? She asked later when they collided in the service corridor. He looked at her like she'd caught him stealing. Then smiled, half apology, half challenge. That obvious? She should have ignored him. Should have gone back to work. Instead she warned him. And somehow, an hour later, she was stuck in a wine cellar with him. Back in the present, the digital screen blinked to life. Autolock, night security mode. Access restricted until 6 a.m. Joanna stared. 6 hours. We're trapped, she said flatly. The man leaned against a shelf, folding his arms. Looks like it. Her temper flared. Do you have any idea what happens if I miss my shift upstairs? He shrugged. They'll assume you quit. Her chest tightened. I can't quit. Something shifted in his expression, something real beneath the teasing surface. Hey, he said more softly. We'll figure it out. She laughed bitterly. You say that like you've ever had to figure things out. His jaw tightened. That's not fair, he replied quietly. She didn't answer. The silence stretched, heavy, uncomfortable. Then he reached for a bottle. If we're going to be stuck, he said, we might as well drink something worth the trouble. Her eyes widened. Are you insane? That bottle costs more than my car, he finished lightly. She frowned. You don't even have a car. He smiled. You'd be surprised. The cork popped. And somewhere between the first sip of impossibly smooth wine and the slow unraveling of tension, Joanna realized something unsettling. This man wasn't what he pretended to be. And neither was she. By the time dawn crept in through the narrow ventilation window, the wine cellar had become something else entirely. A confessional. A battleground. A place where two people stripped of status, no uniforms, no titles, were forced to see each other as human. But upstairs, in the world of chandeliers and power, someone had noticed their absence. And when the cellar door finally opened, everything would change. The morning after the cellar. The wine cellar door opened at exactly 6 in the morning with a soft mechanical click. Light flooded the narrow corridor. Joanna blinked, squinting, her body stiff from the stone floor and a night that felt both endless and impossibly short. For a moment she didn't move, half afraid that stepping out would shatter whatever fragile bubble had formed underground. The man beside her stood first. He offered his hand. Ready? He asked. She hesitated, then took it. The moment their fingers touched, Something unspoken passed between them, an awareness that whatever waited upstairs, things would never be the same. They stepped into the hallway together. A cleaner stared, then smiled knowingly. "Well," the woman said cheerfully, pushing her cart aside, "someone had an interesting night." Joanna's face burned. The man laughed, warm, unashamed, entirely unconcerned with appearances. "You have no idea." As the elevator doors closed, Joanna pulled her hand free. "Don't get used to that," she muttered. He tilted his head. "Used to what?" "To me," she said. "This was a one-night disaster. Nothing more." His smile softened. "If you say so." But the look in his eyes said he didn't believe her. Upstairs, reality came rushing back. The gala was over. The guests gone. The supervisors irritable and impatient. Joanna barely escaped a formal warning, blamed not for being trapped but for disappearing without permission. The man, Ricardo, she'd learned his name somewhere between the third glass of wine and the quiet hours before dawn, took the blame without complaint. "She didn't leave," he said calmly. "I did." The supervisor rolled her eyes. "You're lucky we don't fire you both." Ricardo only smiled. Joanna didn't know why that bothered her. She fully expected never to see him again. Men like him, carefree, confident, charming, didn't linger in the lives of women like her. That's what experience had taught her. So when her phone buzzed 2 hours later with a message from an unknown number, she frowned. "Did you get home safe?" She stared at the screen longer than necessary. "Yes," she finally typed. "You. Still tasting that wine. And thinking about you." She scoffed, then smiled despite herself. 3 days later, reality slapped her in the face. Art. The restaurant where she worked mornings was already loud with clattering plates and shouted orders when the door opened and he walked in. Not in a suit. Not in polished confidence. In worn jeans. A plain t-shirt. Baseball cap pulled low. Joanna froze mid-order. "Joanna?" the customer asked. "Sorry," she murmured, forcing herself to focus. "What were you saying?" But her eyes kept drifting back. He was talking to Miguel. The owner. Laughing. Shaking hands. Then Miguel clapped him on the shoulder. "You start today." Her stomach dropped. She grabbed his arm and dragged him into the kitchen. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. He grinned. "Working." "You followed me?" "I prefer," strategically appeared. "This is inappropriate." "I asked Miguel if he needed help," Ricardo said lightly. He did. "I needed a job." Problem solved. She stared at him. "You're insane." "Probably," he agreed. "Give me a week. If I annoy you, I'm gone." She should have said no. She didn't. Ricardo was terrible in the kitchen. Spectacularly terrible. He burned pans. Mixed up salt and sugar. Nearly set something on fire. Miguel shouted. Carmen, the older cook, shook her head. And yet, Ricardo stayed late. Cleaned without being asked. Lifted heavy pots for others. Apologized when he messed up. He listened. People noticed. So did Joanna. The real test came during lunch rush. A table of well-dressed men. Loud. Entitled. Drunk before noon. One blocked her path. Another made a comment that made her skin crawl. She handled it professionally, until a hand touched her waist. Ricardo was there instantly. She said no, he said, voice calm and dangerous. The man sneered. And who are you? Someone who doesn't tolerate disrespect. Silence followed. The men backed down. Outside, Joanna's hands shook. Ricardo framed her face gently. Are you okay? She nodded. Then surprised herself by hugging him. That night, as he walked her home, Joanna realized something terrifying. She wasn't just attracted to him. She trusted him. And that was far more dangerous. Because she still didn't know who he really was. The truth behind the uniform. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of silence. Ricardo didn't text that morning. No teasing message. No ridiculous joke. No, did you sleep well? That had quietly become part of Joanna's routine. She told herself it didn't matter. People had lives. Jobs. Responsibilities. Still, the absence sat heavy in her chest. At the restaurant, he was quieter than usual. Focused. Almost tense. When their eyes met across the room, he smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Everything okay? She asked softly when they crossed paths near the sink. Yeah, he said too quickly. Just family stuff. She nodded, respecting the boundary. But the unease lingered. It was just after lunch when he arrived. The man didn't belong in the Vina Dorada. His suit was too expensive. His posture too commanding. His presence sucked the air out of the room without him saying a word. Conversations dimmed. Even Miguel straightened nervously. Joanna felt it before she understood it. Then the man spoke. Is Ricardo Aquila here? The name landed like a dropped plate. Ricardo went pale. Joanna turned slowly. You're his father? The man said flatly. The world tilted. Ricardo stepped forward. Not here. This ends today, his father replied. You've made your point. Joanna watched the exchange like an outsider, watching a version of Ricardo she had never seen shrink under the weight of expectation. This isn't a phase, Ricardo said quietly. This is my life. His father's eyes flicked to Joanna. And she's part of this experiment too? Something inside her snapped. I'm not an experiment, she said firmly. The older man raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Ricardo's voice sharpened. She's the reason I stayed. Silence fell. Then his father scoffed. Come home. Stop pretending to be someone you're not. Ricardo straightened. I'm finally being exactly who I am. The man stared at his son for a long moment, then turned and left without another word. Behind the restaurant, Ricardo leaned against the brick wall, breathing hard. I should have told you, he said. I just didn't know how. She folded her arms. Try now. He looked at her, really looked at her. My family owns Aquila Events, he said. The company that hosted the gala. The one you were working. Her heart skipped. That night, he continued, I wasn't staff. I was hiding. The words hung between them. I wanted to know who I was without my name opening doors, he said. Without money fixing everything. Joanna absorbed it slowly. You let everyone treat you like nothing, she said. He nodded. Because that's how people treat you. And I needed to understand that. Anger flared, then faded into something softer. You didn't lie to me about who you were with me, she said finally. You just didn't tell me everything. I was scared, he admitted. She stepped closer. Of what? That you'd see the money before you saw me. She placed a hand over his chest. I already saw you. That night, Ricardo took her somewhere different. No uniforms. No pretending. A quiet restaurant overlooking the city. The staff greeted him by name. Everything clicked. When he finally told her the full truth, how wealthy he really was, she laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. You chose this, she asked, gesturing between them. Yes, he said without hesitation. Every time. She searched his face, then kissed him. Slow. Certain. You're an idiot, she murmured. He smiled. I know. But across the city his father watched. And he wasn't done. When power walks back into the room, Joanna thought knowing the truth would make things easier. It didn't. It made everything heavier. 4 days after Ricardo's confession, she found herself noticing things she hadn't before. The way people's tone shifted when they recognized his name, how doors opened faster, how respect appeared instantly when wealth was implied. It made her stomach twist, because none of those people had earned his loyalty. She had. The test came on a Friday night. Miguel had warned them the reservation was important. A private dining request. High-profile guests. No mistakes. Joanna was halfway through polishing glasses when the doors opened, and the room changed. Alejandro Aquila walked in. Not alone. Behind him came executives, investors, city officials. People whose names appeared in magazines. People who never waited for tables. Ricardo froze in the kitchen. Joanna felt it instantly. He's here, she whispered. Ricardo closed his eyes for half a second. Then he removed his apron. No, she said sharply. Don't hide. He looked at her. They'll humiliate you. She stepped closer. Let them try. Alejandro Aquila surveyed the restaurant like a man inspecting property he already owned. Charming, he said coldly when Miguel greeted him. Rustic. Miguel forced a smile. Ricardo stepped out. I didn't invite you, Ricardo said evenly. Alejandro's gaze slid to Joanna. This establishment employs my son, he said. I find that ironic. Joanna straightened. He earns his place here, she said. Alejandro chuckled. Does he? Ricardo's voice was calm, but unyielding. You're not welcome to disrespect my co-workers. The room went silent. Alejandro studied his son like a chessboard. Enough, he said. Come home. End this farce. Ricardo shook his head. No. Alejandro's lips thinned. Then I'll end it. He turned to Miguel. I'll buy this restaurant, he said casually. Double market value. Tonight. Miguel's breath caught. Joanna's blood ran cold. Alejandro looked back at Ricardo. Problem solved. Ricardo didn't move. Joanna stepped forward. You don't own people, she said clearly. And you don't get to buy dignity. Alejandro raised an eyebrow. And you are. Someone who worked her way up without shortcuts, she replied. Someone your son respects. And someone who won't be intimidated by money. The executive shifted uncomfortably. Alejandro stared at her longer this time. Then, unexpectedly, Ricardo laughed. A quiet laugh. Free. No, Ricardo said. You won't buy this place. And even if you could, I'd still walk out. Alejandro's expression hardened. Then you walk away from everything. Ricardo nodded. I already did. Silence. Then Miguel spoke. You're not buying anything, he said. And you're not welcome here. Alejandro stared, then smiled thinly. Very well, he said. Let's see how long principles last without money. He turned and left. That night, Joanna expected Ricardo to break. He didn't. They sat on her apartment floor eating instant noodles. You okay? She asked softly. He leaned against the wall. For the first time? Yes. She took his hand. I don't want your money, she said. I want you. He squeezed her fingers. Then I'm already rich. But Alejandro Aquila was planning something else. And this time the world would be watching. When justice finally poured out, the fallout didn't come quietly. It came publicly. 3 days after Alejandro Aquila walked out of the Vina Dorada, headlines began circulating in business circles. Quiet at first, then louder. Aquila Events loses major clients. Insiders question leadership style. Employees speak out about toxic culture. Joanna read the articles on her phone during her break, her hands shaking slightly. Is this because of you? She asked Ricardo that night. He shook his head slowly. No. This is because of him. Employees had started talking. Former staff. Junior planners. Assistants who had been silenced for years. Stories of humiliation, unpaid overtime, discrimination, and fear spilled out. Stories that had always been there, just waiting for someone brave enough to walk away first. Ricardo hadn't exposed his father. He'd simply refused to protect him. And that was enough. Alejandro Aquila called one last time. Ricardo put the phone on speaker. You've embarrassed this family, Alejandro said coldly. Ricardo looked at Joanna, then back at the phone. No, he replied. I stopped pretending. You threw away a legacy. Ricardo's voice was steady. You confused control with respect. People don't follow you because they believe in you. They follow you because they're afraid. Pause. Then Alejandro spoke again, quieter now. You chose her over everything. Ricardo didn't hesitate. I chose integrity. The line went dead. Weeks passed. Aquila Events collapsed into restructuring. Investors pulled out. The board forced Alejandro into retirement. The empire built on intimidation crumbled under the weight of truth. And Ricardo? He stayed. Still bussing tables. Still learning to cook. Still burning the occasional pan. But something had changed. People listened to him now, not because of his name but because of how he treated them. Miguel offered him a partnership in the restaurant. Ricardo declined. I want to earn it, he said. Joanna watched him that night from across the room, laughing with the staff, sleeves rolled up, comfortable, grounded, proud. One evening, after closing, Ricardo took her hand and led her downstairs. Not to the wine cellar. To the quiet street outside. I have something for you, he said. Her heart raced. Ricardo. He smiled and held up a simple key. I bought the building, he said. Not to own you. Not to change your life without asking. She stared at him. I fixed the plumbing, he continued. Renovated the apartments upstairs. Long-term leases. Affordable rent. Your sister won't have to choose between school and survival anymore. Tears welled in her eyes. You did all this, quietly. He nodded. Power should protect, not dominate. She stepped into his arms. This, she whispered, this is real wealth. Months later, Joanna stood in a sunlit room, her own small restaurant finally open. Simple. Honest. Full every night. Ricardo worked beside her. No titles. No spotlight. Just respect. One evening, as the doors closed and the city hummed outside, Joanna laughed softly. Do you ever think about that night? She asked. The cellar? Ricardo smiled. That was the moment everything true began. She kissed him gently. And somewhere, far away from power and privilege, justice had finally been served. Not with revenge but with choice.